Terrific. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler.
Sorry, Josie, did you want to start recording?
Recording in progress.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the hearing on the mayor's proposed budget. The primary purpose of this evening's event is for community members to provide testimony to council on the proposed budget. Just to provide you a brief overview of our agenda tonight, I'm going to start by reading you a few statements on our electronic meetings as well as our rules of conduct for the evening. Then the mayor will convene the budget committee and ask for the roll call to be called as is required by state statute. But really the bulk of this evening will be dedicated to listening to community testimony on the mayor's proposed budget. Council may offer some closing remarks at the end of the testimony. And then finally, the mayor is going to continue this discussion at the budget committee meeting, which will happen on May 11th. Again, and that's required by state statute. So that May 11th meeting is another opportunity to have your voice heard. It will be, again, Wednesday, May 11th, 2 to 5, and it's the approved budget hearing. But any time between now and then, if you want to offer online testimony, you can do so at portland.gov/CBO, or you can provide that via email at budgetcomment@portlandoregon.gov. So I'm going to read two statements. The first is our electronic meeting statement. The council is holding this meeting electronically, and all members of council are attending remotely by video, and the public can also view the meeting electronically and provide testimony at City Hall. The public can also provide written testimony to council on the budget office website, which is portlandoregon.gov/CBO, and by email at budgetcomment@portlandoregon.gov. The council is taking these steps as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and the need to limit in-person contact and promote social distancing. The pandemic is an emergency that threatens public health, safety, welfare, and requires us to meet remotely and by electronic communications. Thank you for your patience and your flexibility and understanding as we manage through this difficult situation to do the city's business. So tonight, there will be a few rules of conduct. The City Council represents all Portlanders and meets to do the city's business. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during the City Council meeting so that everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. To participate in this hearing, participants applied to give testimony online. If you did not apply and would like to give testimony to council, please submit the testimony in writing at portlandoregon.gov/CBO. When testifying, please state your name for the record, but your address is not necessary. You should declare if you're a lobbyist, or if you're representing an organization, please identify it. You'll have 2 minutes to testify and you'll be timed by staff. Disruptive conduct such as shouting, refusing to conclude your testimony when your time is up, or interrupting others' testimony will not be allowed. So if there are any disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption could result in the meeting person being muted or ejected for the remainder of the meeting. Please be aware that all of the council meetings are recorded. So thank you for making your fellow Portlanders feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Wheeler to convene our budget committee.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everybody. We are now convened as the City of Portland Budget Committee. Keelan, please call the roll. Budget process and the budget. Good evening, Jessica. It's good to see you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, and members of the public. My name is Jessica Kennard, and I am the city's budget director. Let's see, Jeremiah, if you could please pull up the presentation. I'm going to provide you all with a very brief high-level overview of the city's budget to help inform and empower your engagement tonight and in the future. Next slide, please. So the city is not the only entity providing public services to Portlanders, and we partner with other local jurisdiction and regional governments to provide comprehensive services to our communities. The county, which for Portland includes Multnomah, Clackamas, and Washington counties, provides human services, public health services, libraries, the district attorney, management of the jail and parole and probation systems, among other services. TriMet provides bus, light rail, and commuter rail service in the greater Portland region, and Metro plans for the future of the Portland region and provides parks, venues, and services that cross city and county lines. Additionally, the public school systems are important jurisdictional partners. Next slide, please. At the city, we organize our bureaus and services into 7 major service areas, all pictured on this slide with the exception of elected offices. In prior listening sessions, I walked through each service area. Given the amount of people signed up to testify today, I'm not going to do that as the details are listed on this slide. And viewers may watch the full presentation provided in earlier sessions if they would like to know more and hear me talk about those services. Next slide, please. So this chart shows how the city's total $5.9 billion current year budget is divided amongst these 7 service areas. The total budget figures include both operating dollars for day-to-day functions as well as dollars for multi-year needs. The largest service areas are public utilities, followed by administration and support. This is because these functions hold large multi-year capital and debt finance plans, so their total budget figures incorporate much more than just 1 year's operating budget. Next slide, please. Budget conversations and decisions often focus on general fund discretionary resources, as these resources can be allocated with few restrictions. However, the total city budget is only about 10% of the total city budget, only about 10% is comprised of discretionary resource. It's important to remember that as we talk about general fund discretionary allocations, that we're only talking about a relatively small piece of the city's budget pie. Next slide, please. The current year revised budget for the city as of March included nearly $604 million in general fund discretionary resource. And this chart shows how these resources are allocated amongst the city's service areas. The majority of general fund discretionary dollars are used to support public safety services, including police, fire and rescue, the 911 call taking system. The Police Bureau is the largest allocation, followed by fire and rescue. Additionally, the city spends a notable portion of discretionary resources on parks and recreation and on community development services, such as homeless services and planning services. Next slide, please. So our city economists forecast available general fund discretionary resources over a 5-year horizon. And we produce our initial forecast in December and we update it in February and then have a final update in April. This slide looks different than how it looked a month or 2 ago because we just conducted our April forecast update. And due to a significant increase in tax receipts after the April 18th filing deadline, we've updated our forecast to include almost $35 million in more general fund one-time discretionary resource. So what you see here is our new updated forecast, which includes $2.4 million of ongoing resource and $62.8 million of one-time resource. Per city financial policy, half of that one-time resource should be dedicated to major maintenance and infrastructure projects in parks, transportation, or for emergency preparedness. Next slide, please. We also have been fortunate to have received a significant amount of resource from the federal government through the American Rescue Plan Act. And we allocated $104 million of one-time resource last summer in our first tranche, which you can see by viewing the link in blue down below how those resources were allocated. This year, we have the opportunity to allocate a second tranche of $104 million of one-time federal dollars, which the mayor and the council are considering doing, as you can read about in the mayor's proposed budget, which was posted on the CBO website earlier today. Next slide, please. For more information, I encourage you to visit our city budget office website at portland.gov/CBO. And as Jen mentioned, you can always email us at citybudgetoffice@portlandoregon.gov. Next slide, please. And then you have 3 ways to share your perspective and your comments with the city. We still do have, this is our last budget listening session in this format, but we have 3 more public hearings, opportunities to testify in front of the council. That includes, as Jen mentioned, next Wednesday, May 11th from 2 to 5 p.m. Then we will have a hearing with the Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission on Tuesday, June 7th at 10 a.m. And then finally, the council will consider budget adoption on Wednesday, June 8th from 2 to 5 p.m. You may also always submit your online testimony via Map app or email us at budgetcomment@portlandoregon.gov. Next slide, please. That might be the end. All right. With that, I will turn it back over to you, Mayor, to give us some brief remarks.
Yeah, very good. So I gave lengthy budget remarks today to the City Council in our work session, and I presented full remarks the day before in a press conference, which is available on YouTube. It's also available on the City Budget Office website. So today, because we have a number of people signed up, I'm going to keep my remarks to about 2 minutes. I want to express my thanks again to Director Kennard and her entire budget team for getting us through this process up to this point and the hard work that you do, Jessica, and your team. Portlanders reach out every single day to members of the City Council by email, by calls, letters, meetings, or via council testimony to share their experiences with the challenges that Portlanders face each and every day. We hear the concerns of Portlanders. We hear their frustrations, their hopes. We hear the ideas they have to improve our city. And perhaps most importantly, we hear their want for both meaningful and immediate action. An annual budget is a city government's funded plan of action. As such, it determines both the policies that we pursue as well as the specific actions that we're going to take. The fiscal year 2022-23 budget funds meaningful, actionable investments. My colleagues and I have worked hard to build a balanced budget that meets urgent needs within each of our shared priority areas, which we've identified publicly as homelessness, community safety, and economic recovery. And we do so while advancing at least one of the city's pursuits to be more equitable, to mitigate climate change, and to function as a high-performing government. I'm looking forward to hearing more feedback from members of our community tonight on the proposed budget so that we can work to finalize this plan of action. My entire mayor's budget message can be found published in the fiscal year 22-23 proposed budget document that is available online on the City Budget Office's website. For those interested in reviewing the full proposed budget, please visit the City Budget Office website at www.portlandoregon.gov/CBO and click the Budget Documents and Analysis tab. With that, I'll hand this back over to Jen to provide some guidelines regarding public testimony, and then we'll get right into it and hear from all of you. Thanks for showing up tonight. Jen?
Great. Thank you so much, Mayor Wheeler. So this next part of our meeting is really dedicated to public testimony on the mayor's proposed budget. So we had over 40 people sign up tonight to testify this evening, and the council wants to make sure that we hear from everyone. So to help ensure that everyone's heard in a timely manner, we have a couple of suggestions. First, we ask that you remain in this 2-minute allotted testimony time so that we can make sure that we hear from everyone. So you'll see a timer as one of your screens. That's blue sky timer. That will provide a loud chime when 2 minutes are up. We ask that you just promptly conclude your testimony after that chime. But if you don't conclude your testimony, you'll be muted at 2 minutes and 15 seconds so that we can make sure that we hear from as many people as we can this evening. If you're part of a group that signed up to really emphasize a group message or testimony, one option to ensure that the maximum participation that we hear from tonight would be to emphasize your support through an earlier testimony rather than restating remarks. Although, of course, you're welcome to restate earlier testimony if you prefer. But thank you again, truly, for your time and your engagement tonight and for your assistance in making this evening a welcoming and wonderful space for all to participate. We suggest that if you're joining us by phone, you can use *6 to mute or unmute yourself. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Jeremiah to read off the list of names for folks to testify. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. So we'll start off. I'll be reading out names in groups of 3, and then I'll call you individually. The first 3 that we have this evening would be Elizabeth Nye, Diane Miceli, and Ann Casper. We'll start off with Elizabeth Nye.
Hello.
Hi, Elizabeth, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you. I'm Elizabeth Nye, Executive Director of Lansu Chinese Garden. Right now, you are writing a budget at a critical time for our city and for Old Town, a neighborhood in the grips of crisis. Every day, we here in Old Town are dealing with violent crime and drug use, mental health issues, hunger and houselessness, garbage, and rat infestation. This week alone, police have investigated 5 deaths just in Old Town, 4 of which were within a 1-block radius of Lonsue. This is tragic, traumatic, and terrifying for our community. As local businesses in Old Town continue to shutter, this leaves the cultural institutions and social service organizations standing alone to rescue one of the most diverse, historical, and unique neighborhoods in our city. A neighborhood that is truly vital to the soul of Portland as we continue to address our racist past and present, including the current rising incidence of anti-Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander violence. I'm here to ask you to consider making a grant to Lonsue and our sister cultural institutions to help defray expenses related to the current conditions in Old Town so that we can continue to be here for Portland. While other cultural institutions across the city and county are returning to 2019 revenue levels, Lonsue is not. The conditions here in our neighborhood are costing us $500,000 in lost revenue this year alone. On the other side of the ledger, Lonsue has shouldered new expenses related to security that is costing us over $200,000 this year. And these are expenses we've never had to consider before in our past. The need is urgent, and please know these funds will be reinvested not only in our organizations, but in our neighborhood, Old Town as well. The future of this neighborhood and city is at stake. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Diane Miceli. Diane Miceli, are you able to unmute? If you're on phone, please press *6. All right, we'll go on to Ann Casper first. All right. We'll move on to the next group of 3 for now. We have Diane Millard, Bob Salinger, and Jackson Wardle Nyril. We will start off with Diane Millard. Oh, Ann Casper, I see you raised your hand. All right, we'll go back to Ann Casper real quick.
And are you able to unmute now?
The button just came up to unmute. Thank you, everybody.
Great. Thank you so much for your patience.
Great to see you all. And again, thank you all for your very hard work, all of you.
I think Ann's muted again. There's something going on here with the technology. Ann, can you hear me?
I'm back now, right? You can, okay.
Now we can hear you.
Thank you. Okay, first of all, thank you, Mayor Wheeler and everybody for all your hard work. I really appreciate all of you in this hard time of Portland. A couple things about the Portland Street response. I would not add more money to it until number 1, community health workers, peer support specialists are paid the same rate as community health workers and not $30,000 less. If that has changed since I've looked that up, please let me know. We should get the same pay for the same work. That's like having a Latinx or a Black program without having the same pay for Black and Latinx people. I'd also like to encourage you to use peer researchers. So there are academic peer researchers in, well, we have one or two in Oregon, but in Florida, New York, and London, and ask the questions that Greg Townley doesn't ask. I had a conversation with him 2 weeks ago. We're not looking at accountability. We're not asking the questions we need to really study this pilot project. Is it a good pilot or not? Another thing, and I know I didn't look at your budget at all of it, but we need public safety, community organizing again. You have people who come out and they do building inspections because I had it done, but no one's going to help us. I'm on Williams right now and it's a mess. We've got gun people, we've got businesses broken, and we want to organize, but no one in the city is there to help us organize. And I hope that you can get that program going. And also I do a lot of work with houseless, and there's not accessibility for older people or people who can't work. Well, we need lower bunk beds for people. So I'm running out of time. So, and I also just wanted to say, and also Vic Wolf is the longest business person on 23rd Avenue. He's finishing up. He's a hairdresser, 40 years, 23rd. Thank you. Just make sure to say thank you to him. We're having heart drain in Portland. Please bring the heart out again.
Thank you. Diane Miceli, I saw you showed up. Are you able to unmute for a moment? Perfect.
The button wasn't there before. I appreciate your help there for getting it to me. The city added funding for BPS staffing for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and a climate policy public involvement process, and that's a positive first step. Our preference would still be having a climate emergency officer with the powers of a director position. We would encourage the city to look at many of the process recommendations of your employees' peace plan to move to accountable concrete yearly actions through a strong climate emergency response plan and climate emergency commission, working collaboratively with a network of Bureau climate emergency managers to review quarterly progress with a goal of 10% annual emission reductions. Progress can be made through the sectoral decarbonization process referred to in the joint mayoral and BPS release, but the scale of action needs to go well beyond what is being proposed. The build, shift, heart standards are a positive concept in incorporating justice in the development of existing building performance standards to reduce emissions, and a gradualist approach still needs to ensure significant timely reduction so emissions are halved by 2030 with necessary check-in points along the way so residents are not exposed to sudden increased costs. To provide a balance to the more difficult retrofitting process, many cities are getting the needed short-term emission decreases by passing codes for new buildings with short-term carbon neutral goals. We would urge the city to take action this year on the peace plan proposal for Portland to adopt and implement a building code that mandates all new buildings to be carbon neutral starting no later than 2025, and that at least 1/3 of new multifamily units should be preserved for low-income families. We also support, in partnership with utilities and our PSEF, investments in accelerated retrofits with electrical heat pumps to address heating and cooling for low-income families, as Seattle, Washington, D.C., and LA have done. This has the potential to provide green jobs, emissions declines, and safety during anticipated heat events. Thank you.
Thank you. The next three we have, or the next two, will be from Bob Salinger and Diane Millard. We'll start off with Bob Salinger.
Good evening, Mayor Willer and members of the City Council. For the record, my name is Bob Salinger. I'm the Conservation Director for Portland Audubon Society. I came tonight to express our disappointment that there is no funding in this budget for staffing at the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability to advance the Dark Skies Initiative, specifically to advance regulations associated with reducing light pollution. This has been an issue that we've been working on with you for a long time. It dates back to 2012. It was referenced in the 2015 Climate Action Plan, the 2016 Comprehensive Plan, the 2017 Central City Plan. various budget notes. We got partway through a process a couple of years ago, but the city withdrew funding at the start of COVID, which we understood and appreciated, but it delayed a project that's already been delayed several times. We were expecting that you would bring it back, and are disappointed that you haven't. The following language is from the budget ordinance in the fall of 2020 when that funding was withdrawn. And this is your words, not ours, just to be very clear. Quote, the Portland Dark Skies project will reduce light pollution in Portland, reducing negative health impacts to humans and other animals, reducing energy waste, and bringing back the night sky. Last year, Council directed the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability to develop recommendations to get us there, and in September 2020 adopted a Dark Skies report. Due to unforeseen and urgent circumstances related to COVID-19, including budget shortfalls, work on implementation of the recommendations has been delayed. The Dark Skies project has strong community support and supports the city's goals related to human health, climate, equity, and wildlife conservation. However, the project has already been delayed several times in recent years. To ensure the work done to date by the city and its partners results in meaningful outcomes, in this proposal, Mayor Willer directs the City Bureau of Planning and Sustainability to develop a budget proposal to fund an important part of the solution, code updates for the council's consideration as soon as practicable, and no later than the spring of 2021-22 supplemental budget process, i.e. last fall. We were expecting it then, it didn't happen. We were expecting it now, it hasn't happened. We would love to work with you on this, but we really need you to be a partner on this thing. We've invested a lot, you have.
Okay, just a reminder, everyone, again, because we have so much testimony, we're just automatically going to mute folks at 2 minutes and 15 seconds. So if you all could just help us by keeping the testimony at 2 minutes, I apologize. I know it seems really abrupt, but we appreciate your testimony.
Thanks, Jen. Next, we'll hear from Diane Millard.
I think that might be me, Danielle Mayard.
Oh, I guess, yes, probably. Sorry, your name got messed up.
No worries, thanks. Hi, I'm Danielle Mayard. I am here to support the funding of a second cycle of Youth Voice, Youth Vote participatory budgeting. Young people are vastly underrepresented in government decisions, and there are very few options for young people to understand budgeting and general bureaucratic functions. And with budgeting being the primary way that governments exercise power, we can't reimagine a society that serves us all without new mechanisms of power sharing like participatory budgeting. And getting the youth involved now so they have a stake in the decisions where they live, we will set up our communities for more success. Additionally, funding Youth Vote PB will specifically enlist East Portland's diverse youth population in exercising their power to develop, propose, and select needed projects and communities. With my experience thus far on city charter outreach, it's clear to me how powerful Youth Voice, Youth Vote participatory budgeting will be in changing the narrative in regards to who has access to these spaces. Despite city money going to a lot of outreach in order to get a greater representation of Portlanders to interact with something like the city charter, it's been an overwhelming amount of white retired homeowners continuing to be the majority of public comments and survey responses. And this Youth Vote, Youth Voice programming is an incredible opportunity that I wish I had in high school and all of us had in high school or when we were young to really understand how to meaningfully engage with government processes for the purpose of creating the world we really want to see. And by starting with young people living in East Portland, they get to be the stakeholders in launching PB in Oregon, and this kind of creative solution will be really beneficial for all Portlanders. Thank you.
Thank you. The next three today we will hear from would be Don Stephen, Levine Wax, and Jim Labby. We'll start off with Don Stephen.
Could that be Don Levine?
Yes, I think that would make sense. My apologies, I'm reading off a list that was provided. Thank you for understanding.
Sure, I understand. I'm currently a member of the Police Bureau Advisory Committee. I realize that there's no way to hire or train all-purpose super cops who can address all calls and interact effectively with all community stakeholders. I'm very happy to see that the proposed budget significantly increases the PS3 and Portland Street response programs to develop responders with specific skill sets. However, there are currently few incentives for Portland police to improve their education and skills in specific areas of interest to better serve the community. The only education incentive is a 2% salary increase with the completion of a non-specific 4-year degree. I taught 10 years with Portland Public Schools. In addition to salary increases based on years of service, PPS uses an education step increase as well. The cost of continuing education is reimbursed upon successful completion of courses, and a set number of completed credits results in a step increase in salary in addition to experience. The recent payback report submitted to the Police Bureau and City contains a sample program using PCC course schedule in its public safety, justice, and communications programs. It provides incentives in the form of reimbursement for successful completion of specific courses and an education step increase for completion of groups of courses in specific areas. It provides a relatively low-cost incentive for Portland police staff to pursue specific areas of interest that benefit their own employability, improve and broaden the skill sets within the police department, and better serve the stakeholders in the Portland community. In addition, I've heard both Commissioners Rubio and Hardesty at previous hearings express a desire to develop a mechanism to attract potential police hires with connections and ties to the community. Portland Public Schools currently has a robust career and technical education division with well-developed CTE programs that include student career experiences and internships in both public and private sectors, and a strong history of successfully placing students in the public safety environment during their high school education, and then connecting them to post-secondary opportunities. It is possible to develop a public safety CTE program in one or more high schools that provide a career pathway for Portland area students to develop knowledge and skills in the areas of police, fire, and EMS, hands-on familiarity with Portland public safety, and a mechanism to encourage locals.
Thank you. Next, we will have Stephen Wex.
Good evening, Steve Wax, resident of Mount Tabor for going on 40 years. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of inclusion in the budget of the Water Bureau request for funds to study the extent of repair needed on Mount Tabor Reservoir number 6, which has been empty since June of 2021. Budget Office removed the Water Bureau's request. In doing so, it appears as though it did not give proper consideration to both policy and legal reasons why the study and repair should move forward at this time. In 2015, after extensive study, review, and testimony, City Council appeared to have settled the policy issues regarding the disconnection of the Mount Tabor reservoirs. In Resolution 37146 and Land Use Decision LU 14-21844, Council recognized that reservoirs with water are a central and important feature of the Mount Tabor Park. The park and reservoirs are visited and used by thousands of residents and visitors to the city of Portland every week. Reservoir 6 is the largest of the 3 reservoirs, and leaving it empty is an eyesore that detracts from our city's livability, and it undermines equity concerns by downgrading the experience of free open space to all users, policies that were articulated by the mayor in the 3 things that were set out at the beginning of this session. City Council's actions in 2015 also created a legal obligation by resolving a dispute between the city and the neighbors and the neighborhood association in what Council called a binding resolution. Failure to comply with the directive to make the best efforts, Council's own language, to ensure that the reservoirs be full as often and as completely as possible would both violate the resolutions and would with the neighbors who negotiated the settlement. We urged the council to include the money in the budget so that that can go forward. Thank you much.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Jim Labby.
Greetings, Mayor and City Council. My name is Jim Labby. I'm with Participatory Budgeting Oregon. I'm here on behalf of the 4 other organizations that are jointly implementing youth voice, youth vote, participatory budgeting in the East Metro area this year, and hopefully in East Portland next year. We're here to support the request for ARPA funding for that second cycle of participatory budgeting with youth in East Portland. We've already begun, and you have heard and you'll be hearing from other youth who are involved in that project. The first cycle was funded with about $690,000 in state ARPA funds that were committed by Senator Jama, Senator Gorsuch, and Representative Ruiz to get this going. And we're very excited to see it continue. We're hoping to engage over 2,000 youth in Senate Districts 24 and 25 the first year. And if we're funded for a second year from the City of Portland, City of Gresham, we hope to reach another 3,000 in the following year. Thanks for the opportunity to comment tonight, and I hope you'll be supporting. This will be the year that we'll be launching participatory budgeting in Portland. Thanks so much.
Thank you. The next three testimonies we'll hear this evening will be from Johnny Dwork, Ginger Edwards, and Jamie Dunphy. We'll start off with Johnny Dwork.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of the Water Bureau's request for funds to study what degree of repair is needed on Mount Tabor's Reservoir 6. I'm sure all of you have at least a little bit of saint in you for the patience that you must demonstrate during this, so thank you. As you know, Mount Tabor Park serves us as a revitalizing refuge in this bustling city. I come to you today as one of those well-intended Portlanders who fought in good faith for years to protect this great city resource, and who spent many thousands of dollars of our hard-earned income to help pay for the legal representation that won an enforceable resolution and land use decision in this matter. In this era of great challenge for our city, in which we are all concerned about Portland's standard of livability and our collective health, I'd like to respectfully entreat all of you to honor the resolution and land use decision in this matter. Because if you don't, I think you risk that you may disenfranchise those of us citizens who not only have put skin in the game by purchasing properties and paying property tax for many years, but who also care enough about our city's standard of livability, about public health, about the law, about justice and common good, that when something threatens these standards, these values, the law, that we're willing to stand up and fight for the common good of this city. Because if you're not going to enforce the will of the people in a hard-fought matter like this, then you risk losing our heartful participation in this city matters that count. And if that happens, I fear that you can kiss this city's healthy future goodbye. Therefore, I urge that you include the Water Bureau's requested $745,000 in this year's budget. Thank you very much for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Ginger Edwards.
Hello. Hello, my name is Ginger Edwards, and thank you for allowing me to testify tonight. First, I want to thank you, Mayor Wheeler, for your proposed budget that prioritizes balanced solutions, for our homeless crisis. I'm here to urge the rest of you commissioners to fund the budget with a balance for shelter, affordable housing, and wraparound services. We need all three: shelters, wraparound services, and affordable housing. My focus tonight is on the services section. To provide strong services, living wages must be included in this budget for caseworkers and social service providers. Caseworkers and social service providers must be able to form trusting relationships with those they serve. Without that trusting relationship, a referral for services such as mental health or drug and alcohol counseling is just noise. And it may even make someone believe that they should leave a shelter because that's an expectation. Yet those services are essential for people to achieve success, both in the shelter where they may be living and later in permanent affordable housing. You get what you pay for. Case management is hard work. It takes time and patience to form those trusting relationships. Case managers need to be paid a living wage that allows them to live and work in Portland. Please keep all three legs of this stool strong and support the Joint Office of Homeless Services budget while increasing wages for case managers and social service providers to ensure the best success for all. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Jamie Dunphy.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Jamie Dunphy, and I'm a board member speaking on behalf of the organization Music Portland. Music Portland supports the proposed creation of the Office of Film and Events. This office has the potential to play an outsized role in bringing life back to Portland and enshrines the City Council's continued commitment to live entertainment as a vital economic factor, not simply as a nice to have. I would also like to commend your staff, Mayor and Commissioners, for being incredibly responsive to the music industry and to Music Portland's requests for some last-minute adjustments on this proposal. This is a thoughtful and strategic expansion of programs in support of the creative economy and shows how serious this City Council is about the future of Portland. Your staff have been very intentional about ensuring that this office is right-sized, is on the right trajectory for growth, and is focused on the unique role that the City of Portland must play in supporting the events industry, including the music industry. We all know past examples where city councils have had the right intentions, the right energy, but the final product ends up being too broad, too under-resourced, unstrategic, and ultimately falls flat. I'm very impressed by this proposal as being a logical expansion of what the city does well without making promises it can't keep. We love that this office is explicitly looking about how to expand to include music under its purview. The needs of the music industry often overlap with those of film and events, but the intentional way that this program envisions expanding to include music clearly recognizes an appreciation for the unique needs of these three industries. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we will continue to urge this council to find new and meaningful ways to support the music industry. A budget is a moral document, and these specific proposals demonstrate the shared values and shared vision of the future of our city. We look forward to continuing to work together and making sure that this office is successful. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next three testimonies this evening are from Ashley Henry, Jill Cropp, and Sean Green. We will first hear from Ashley Henry.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Ashley Henry. I'm here representing Business for a Better Portland this evening. We are an organization of over 425 businesses and organizations that believe that in order to have economic success in our business community, we must also have success throughout our community. I'm not able to provide specific comments tonight on the budget because I haven't had a chance to digest the mayor's proposed budget as well as the revenue forecast that came out a couple of days ago. But what I'd like to do is preface what will be our comments later and ask for you to consider a dichotomy that I'd like to highlight for you. That is that Prosper Portland, our city's economic development agency, asked you to consider $10 million for a stabilization fund for small businesses that have suffered during this pandemic. We had planned in concert with our allies to ask for actually more than that, about 15 million, which, to be perfectly honest, would only scratch the surface of the need. Earlier this week, you received a revenue forecast that showed that we have $35 million more than you had anticipated. And your city economist this morning shared with you that one of the primary drivers of that is unprecedented revenues from companies that are thriving in the pandemic. Those folks are not bad people. It's just that their businesses were situated at this moment in time to benefit from dynamics that have adversely impacted the very companies that we identify as being iconic and central to all that we hold dear in Portland. And in that moment, rather than increasing for small business stabilization, it was sliced in half.
Time.
So I'd like to continue that conversation at another time. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, we will hear from Jill Cropp,
Hello, Mayor Wheeler and commissioners. My name is Jill Cropp. I'm a Portland native and a self-employed architect working on affordable missing middle housing. I'm also a recent appointee to DRAC, the Development Review Advisory Committee, although tonight I'm speaking on just behalf of myself. I want to express my strong support for the allocation of $1.3 million of a one-time general fund support for the upcoming fiscal year budget to help support continued planning and implementation efforts to improve the citywide permitting system.
Excuse me for a second, Jill. I don't see the clock moving.
Oh.
So Commissioner, we are having actually some technical difficulties with our clock. My apologies. We are going to, Josie in my office who's helping facilitate will be timing on her phone, and we will message Jeremiah when the time is up. But unfortunately, right now we don't have the clock working properly. So we will ask that Jeremiah will jump in and say time, and then we'll ask for you to try to wrap up within 15 seconds of when he says time, please. And I'm so sorry to interrupt your testimony.
That's okay. It was at a perfect segue.
Oh, good.
So as an architect, getting projects through building permit is a really big part of the work that I do. I've been working for over 20 years in Portland, and it has always been a complex process with many moving parts and frequent frustrations. It's kind of the nature of the beast, really. However, over the last 10 years or so, it really feels to me like the process gets a little bit more complicated and seems to take a little bit longer each year. And because of that, it takes me longer to wrap up my projects and get them ready to build. So all those takes me longer, costs my client more money, takes longer to get projects built and ready for people to build. And I don't think that I need to tell you all that we can't afford to do anything that impacts the creation of more affordable housing. So I was excited to learn when I joined DRAC this year that Commissioner Ryan's office has already spearheaded an effort to drastically overhaul the permitting process. And I've already been really blown away by their efforts and their creativity, coming up with solutions and the research they've done. And I really want them to be able to finish that process and move it through and implement it in a process that's going to be great for me and for everybody else. So it's important that Portland invests in.
Thank you. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Next, we will have Sean Green.
Hi, nice to see you all. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for having us testify. My name is Sean Green. I serve on the Development Review Advisory Committee, also known as DRAC. I'm chair of the DRAC Process Improvement and Technology Subcommittee, and this is my third year serving on the BDS Budget Advisory Committee. I'm also a builder and chair of the Northeast Coalition of Neighborhoods, and tonight I'm speaking on behalf of myself. As many of you already know, the vast majority of the BDS budget is self-funded through fees. Out of an over $85 million budget, BDS requested $1.4 million to fund 8 full-time equivalent for key positions and $1.2 million to support the neighborhood inspections program. This $2.6 million general fund request represents 3% of the BDS budget. Permitting, inspections, and other government-run and other programs run by BDS support a safe and thriving community. We have the opportunity here to leverage the investments that BDS is already making through fee revenue with some one-time general fund dollars to support priorities that Council has identified, including houselessness, community safety, and economic development. I appreciate that the Mayor's proposed budget includes 1 position for the Empowered Communities program. I encourage Council to seriously consider the remaining requests. I believe these one-time investments will benefit our entire community, and you are welcome to connect with myself or fellow volunteers to understand the opportunities that we may pass up. This one-time request that were not included in the Mayor's proposed budget include additional staff to improve the permitting process, expedited permitting for shelters and preschool for all projects, support for expedited solar projects, and support for the neighborhood inspections programs that improves tenant health and safety. At the beginning of this hearing, the Mayor referred to meaningful action that the budget represents. I encourage Council to consider fully funding the BDS requested budget to support not only a high-performing government, but also support those city priorities that have been identified by you all. Thank you.
Thank you. The next three testimonies tonight will be from Bruce Podomnik, Ingo Myers, and Thomas Karwacki. We will first hear from Bruce Podomnik.
Good evening. Thank you so much for letting me testify. My name is Bruce Podomnik. I'm a professor at Lewis and Clark College in Sociology and Environmental Studies. I know there are tremendous social needs in the city, but I want to speak here for the climate emergency that we're facing. We can all look here at the picture that Mayor Wheeler, you have behind you, the beautiful Mount Hood, the city of Portland that we all love so dearly. I just want you to recall again the horrific summer situations that we've had with weird orange, red skies, forest smoke everywhere. So I think I would like to see the budget more aggressively reflect the climate emergency that was declared by the city in 2020. There are some things in the current budget that do address climate issues, but I want to highlight a couple of things I think that are really crucial. One is that we need a climate emergency director to help coordinate a lot of the different initiatives that are happening in different bureaus. So I really want to encourage money be put behind that. Secondly, we need to continue to move away from reliance on fossil fuel-based transportation. Listening to the children of the city, for example, and not expanding freeways that go by their schools, but instead supporting electrification of the city's fleet. We need to be very cautious about expanding traffic across the Columbia River Crossing Bridge because that has really adverse effects on people who live in North and Northeast Portland, including people who have asthma. And also, we need to more carefully regulate and eventually begin to control and constrain the petroleum infrastructure that's located in Northwest Portland. It's very dangerous. It's built upon seismically very fragile space. And we need to begin to really reduce the amount of dependence we have on fossil fuels that are coming through our city. So I thank you for the steps that have been taken in this budget to move in that direction. I want to ask you to continue to have Portland be a shining example of the things that we can do as a city, learning from other cities that are doing innovative things and forging ahead, taking very seriously the climate emergency that has been declared. So thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Ingo Myers. Ingo Myers, are you able to unmute? Okay, I've been told that Ingo Myers is no longer on the call. We will go to Thomas Karwacki.
Mayor, Council, and Budget staff, I'm Tom Karwacki, UPNA Secretary, speaking on behalf of the UPNA Board. Thank you for listening to the community and developing this mayor's budget. The UPNA Board supports the livability, community safety, economic development, and homeless efforts, particularly the Safe Rest Village funding and Civic Life Small Grants Program additions. We agree with Ginger Edwards' comments tonight, and we still are concerned that the Civic Life budget doesn't staff the North Portland Neighborhood Services at the same level as other city-run and independent coalitions. We are also concerned that the SRV and homeless services need more community engagement and outreach. A special concern is the Peninsula Crossing Trail and the Heritage Tree and other trees that are being destroyed through limb cutting, parking and camping underneath canopy, and fires. Several more this past weekend killed one of the largest madronas in the North Portland, right next to the Heritage Tree. We ask Commissioners Ryan, Hardesty, and Rubio to take immediate action to clean up the Peninsula Crossing Trail and to protect the Heritage Tree, which Commissioners Nick Fish and Amanda Fritz worked so hard to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm curious, why are you asking Commissioner Hardesty and Rubio to clean it up? We have absolutely nothing to do with the Joint Office of Houseless Services.
Okay, Commissioner Hardesty, the PBOT the trail is actually on PBOT, and it's in charge of maintaining it. And the tree is adjacent to that. It is on the Housing Bureau property at this time.
Again, that is
and it's all still
houseless services is supposed to be provide. I mean, we have a whole bunch of stuff. It's just not something that Commissioner Rubio and I are directly responsible for. So I just want to be clear about that. That's why we put 45 million in the joint office. That's why we have a hooker that comes and does the cleanup. So I just think it doesn't.
I appreciate your concern. we will address this specifically in some additional comments for you. Thank you.
Thank you. The next three testimonies this evening will be by Nick Gila, Michael Fairhurst, and Lynn Hanlon. We'll start off with Nick Gila.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and other fellow Portlanders. Thank you for the preliminary discretionary allocations that are so focused on meaningful and immediate action, especially given how much of the citywide budget is locked into traditional models of public safety and income security. I'm representing my personal views this evening as a Portlander of 10 years. However, in my day job as the program evaluator and a grant manager for a culturally specific agency providing dozens of programs across every sector, I see daily the consequences of bureau siloing linear, traditional solutions. Members of the council, please ensure that discretionary funds also go toward a focused effort to unsilo systems, integrate systems, and discover long-term systemic solutions. For instance, establishing a small dedicated team for this explicit purpose. Please also ensure that solutions for immediate needs do not block future efforts to secure permanent affordable housing. For instance, please ensure that safe rest villages are on trust land for future permanent affordable services supported housing. I ask that you be brave and that you tap Portland's visionary, empathetic, strategic spirit. And +1 to participatory budgeting and more participatory processes in general. Thanks so much and good luck.
Thank you. Next, Michael Fairhurst.
Thank you. My name is Michael Fairhurst. I'm a member of Extinction Rebellion PDX. I was pleased to see that the mayor's budget had added funding for additional staffing for the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, restoring the Chief Sustainability Officer, which had been cut in prior budgets. There are added coordinators to work in sectoral emissions reductions, the internal cost of carbon, and a climate policy public involvement process. These are positive steps, and they would hold more weight if the sustainability officer had the powers in line with a director position. With the science clear that a substantial decline in greenhouse gas emissions must begin no later than 2025, a comprehensive approach is needed to implement concrete annual steps towards a 10% yearly decline. We would encourage the city to look at many of the process recommendations of your own employees' peace plan. We need a strong climate emergency response plan with accountable strategies and actions. And that plan must have oversight from a broad panel of climate experts and concerned citizens. Even without additional funds this year, significant progress could be made through the sectoral approach to decarbonization referred to in the joint mayoral and PPS release, but the scale of action needs to increase. Extinction Rebellion is asking the city to take concrete steps to reduce transportation emissions in Portland immediately. The latest POEM report makes it clear that we can reduce congestion and emissions, and that more freeways are simply not the answer. So my question for the commissioners today is, how much funding is enough? And I'm here to urge the city of Portland to declare a concrete fossil fuel vehicle mile traveled reduction target of 10% annually, because we must use our position as a progressive city to exceed the targets of the latest IPCC reports and become a model to other cities. I also urge the city to issue a moratorium on the purchase of fossil fuel light duty vehicles in a show of commitment to getting on a new sustainable path. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Lynn Hanlon.
Hi, my name is Lynn Handlin. I'm with Extinction Rebellion Portland, and I was happy to hear that some money is being put towards restoring the Chief Sustainability Officer. This is a good, though rather anemic step. On the CEI hub, the city needs to end the transportation and storage of all fossil fuels that are not to be used in the region, Zenith Energy being a prime example, the lowest of low-hanging fruit. Please make sure you are all ready with all the evidence that the courts need to make sure Zenith is not allowed to continue their dangerous and toxic operations. I know it's not a budget thing, but y'all are here, so there you are. Do not procrastinate. Please do your homework now on this. The city must also step up the process of transitioning the CEI hub away from dangerous and toxic industries, fossil fuel storage and transportation, An earthquake liquefaction zone on a major river is very much not the place to transport and store fossil fuels and like. It's time to step up the process of changing the zoning in the CEI hub to not just restrict the development and expansion of fossil fuel terminals, which really can't happen. They need to start being shut down. Disaster for Portland, we know this. Next is trees. I was really disappointed that there was not increased funding for trees that we were all hoping for. In a heating planet, we need more trees to cool the heat islands. The city knows of the sadly declining state of tree canopy. And the problem is worse in low-income areas, particularly outer East Portland, where I live and work. Trees are disappearing at an alarming rate. They need to be preserved and added to, not removed. More money needs to be allocated to maintaining street trees, planting more trees, and a moratorium on cutting down big trees on private and public lands to be allocated, until an actual plan is made that is fair, maintains big trees, and does not favor big business and developers. We need serious action now on climate change, not study and do later. There was a rumor going around the city didn't think Portlanders really care that much about climate change, and we were like ants. Well, ants in large numbers can do a lot. I think if you discovered we do care.
Time. Thank you. The next three testimonies would be by Harlan Schober, John Larson, and Tom Skiles. First, we'll have Harlan Schober.
Good evening, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioners Hardesty, Ryan, Rubio, and Maps. My name is Harlan Schober. I'm a member of Extinction Rebellion Portland. Thank you for your recent proposed budget increases for climate-related programs. I'm here to ask that you take a hard line with Pacific Core. Designating power sold in the Portland market as clean while continuing to rely primarily on coal for the company's overall energy production can fairly be called greenwashing. Please use the influence of Oregon's largest city to pressure PacifiCorp to genuinely transition to clean energy, that is wind, solar, and geothermal. Understand that methane and nuclear are not clean. Also, when there's a greenhouse gas reduction target for some future date, please make that real by insisting on intermediate targets. For example, a 50% reduction by 2030 should be supported with realistic reduction targets for each year between now and then. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from John Larson.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is John Larson. I'm here on behalf of the Mount Tabor Neighborhood Association, where I've been a board member for 25 years, and I thank you for the opportunity to testify this evening. We in the MTNA consider ourselves profoundly fortunate to live in proximity to one of our city's most beautiful parks, but we recognize that the park is beloved by the entire city and indeed the region, and it is a prime destination for visitors to Portland. When we advocate for the integrity of the park, we are well aware that we are doing so on behalf of tens of thousands of people who treasure it deeply, but who would have no idea that it is under threat. In 2015, when the city determined that it was necessary to disconnect the reservoirs from the drinking water system, there was an extended land use process. Ultimately, the neighborhood entered into negotiations that culminated in a formal agreement with the city council that the reservoirs would continue to be maintained as a central feature of Mount Tabor Park and that they would continue to hold water at their historical levels without any one of them ever being empty for more than a few weeks. I was one of the 4 people who negotiated that agreement, which was memorialized in Council Resolution 37-146, adopted by Council on July 15, 2015. At the time, then Mayor Hales and the rest of the commissioners emphatically and repeatedly assured us that the Council's commitment could absolutely be relied upon and that the resolution is binding upon the city. Last summer, during routine maintenance, voids were discovered under Reservoir 6, the largest and most visible of the Tabor reservoirs, and the Water Bureau has determined that it would not be prudent to fill Reservoir 6 until the damage has been surveyed and its extent is known. The Bureau's budget request included $745,000 for this purpose, but this package was removed from the budget, essentially sweeping aside both the spirit and the letter of the promise that was made to the Portland community in 2015. From a citizen's point of view, this is deeply disturbing. The idea that commitments and binding agreements made by our city council may be counted on for only as long as a particular group of commissioners hold office and then can be summarily disregarded is tremendously damaging to trust in city government. We ask that you respect and uphold the commitment that the City Council made in Resolution 37146 and that you restore to the Water Bureau budget the $745,000 for Reservoir 6. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we'll hear next from Tom Skiles.
Commissioners and Mr. Mayor, my name is Tom Skiles, and I'm a resident, and I live near Mount Tabor Park. This testimony regards the lower reservoirs on Mount Tabor. Before the reservoirs are refilled, please fund the Mount Tabor Reservoir 5 and 6 unforeseen circumstances investigations. That would include a comprehensive ground penetrating radar and seismic study. This is a dam safety issue. The reservoirs are more than 100 years old and concrete lined. Concrete is porous and it leaks. Per a 2017 Water Bureau report, the reservoirs leak up to 300,000 gallons of water per day, a massive volume of water each day. Leakage is flow, and groundwater flow does transport sediment. That flow is potentially transporting sediments from underneath the reservoirs and undermining their structural integrity. In fact, a cursory GPR investigation by the Bureau found voids under the reservoirs. This needs more study and thorough study. I'm a resident and I live downstream from the earth and dam impoundments known as Reservoirs 5 and 6, a half a block away. In the event of a catastrophic breach, my family will be in harm's way. My family and my neighbor's family.
Nick,
right
yes, Nick.
in a safe
How you doing, sir?
Please fund the investigations, and although I do agree with the good intentions of my fellow citizens who advocate for reservoir refill, please do not refill the reservoirs until a thorough investigation is performed. Again, this is a dam safety issue. Thank you.
If I could just jump in for a moment, because a couple of people have mentioned this. The reservoir study has been funded. It is funded in the proposed.
Wonderful. So I would second then that I do not advocate for refilling those reservoirs until the studies are completed, and that the studies need to be very thorough. That is my testimony.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next three testimonies will be by Kevin Sheehan, James O'Loughlin, and Chris Timberlake. First, we'll hear from Kevin Sheehan.
Thank you so much, Mayor Wheeler and members of the Portland City Council. For the record, my name is Kevin Sheehan, and I oversee the homeownership program at the Native American Youth and Family Center. We provide culturally specific programs and services that guide the direction of personal success and balance through cultural empowerment. We provide lifetime services that create a wraparound model that is very robust and effective. I would like to speak tonight in support of allocating $10 million to homeownership from the American Rescue Plan ARPA dollars. Increasing the amount of funding for homeownership directly correlates to the number of low to moderate income households that we can help to secure their own home and to find financial and housing stability in our city. With our city's housing crisis and the lack of affordable homes to purchase, programs for land acquisition and down payment assistance will be crucial in making sure that our residents still have a chance at owning their own homes. Providing opportunities for increasing access, support, and prosperity is vital to our communities and achieving the goal of homeownership. On behalf of the Native American Youth and Family Center, we do urge your support in allocating $10 million to support homeownership in our city. Thank you very much for allowing me to testify.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from James O'Loughlin.
Oh, there we go. I think my testimony is going to be somewhat abbreviated. I was trying to pull double duty with bath time. Yeah, I got you, buddy. My name is James O'Loughlin. I'm a wastewater treatment plant operator here in the city of Portland at the Columbia Boulevard Wastewater Treatment Plant. I'm also a member of LIUNA 483, local labor union. I just wanted to speak with you all tonight out of concern I have regarding past precedent regarding these budgets. failing to consider upcoming contracts for essential employees, especially at this time when we're in an environment of very high inflation. I know I'm kind of repeating things you're all very aware of, but after the challenges of the recent DC2 contracts and the, oh gosh, sorry, it's a very distracting young man. Going forward with my own unions and other essential employees contract negotiations, I wanted to make sure that the kind of cost adjustments for inflation and the challenges of essential employees through this time of pandemic and fire and smoke and ice, where employment with the city has never been less attractive and more challenging, that the allocation of material resources to these essential employees who've been so well heralded throughout these recent crises and yet underfunded saw some immediate attention in this budget and going forward. Thank you, and apologies for the unprofessional presentation.
No worries, thank you. Next, we'll hear from Chris Timberlake.
Good evening, everyone. I am grateful to have this opportunity to speak to you on behalf of SMILE, the Selwood Moreland Improvement League. I want to begin by thanking Commissioner Hardesty, Mayor Wheeler, and their staff for their consideration of SMILE Station's capital improvement needs. My name is Chris Timberlake, and I am the Director of Operations for SMILE. SMILE is one of the oldest of 94 neighborhood associations recognized by the City of Portland. SMILE is committed to being an anti-racist organization, and we believe a strong and healthy community requires a diversity of voices, particularly in leadership roles. It is only through our adherence to these core values and beliefs that we will be able to deliver on our promise of providing joy, empowerment, connection, and inclusivity to all of our neighbors. SMILE is unique among neighborhood associations because we own the SMILE Station, which is located on the corner of Southeast 13th and Tenino Streets here in Selwood. The SMILE Station exists to provide low cost or free space for community groups such as the Red Cross blood drives that we do, Scout meetings, youth athletic meetings, AA and Al-Anon meetings, senior studies programs, youth art and music programs, children's science, literacy, and summer camps, political constituent forums, and neighborhood committee meetings, just to name a few. I am here today, though, because the SMILE Station is in need of a number of capital improvements, significant capital improvements, in order to continue providing an accessible and inclusive space as outlined in the funding request we submitted on April 19th. It is our sincere hope that you all will support the SMILE Station and SMILE's work by including our funding requests in the city's budget. On behalf of SMILE, I sincerely thank you all for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Our next three testimonies would be by Randy Gregg, Michael Cronenthal, and Francis Lansfield.
There's no video of me.
We'll first hear from Randy Gregg.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. My name is Randy Gregg. I'm Executive Director of the Portland Parks Foundation, and we really appreciate being included, that the foundation is included in the 22-23 budget. Our motto is we help people help parks. We leverage private philanthropy and community participation in parks across the entire city. With our mighty staff of 4, we do all kinds of things. We have a Friends and Allies initiative in which we work with over 200 grassroots volunteer groups and other nonprofits devoted to parks. We give grants to these groups as well as technical assistance and fundraising, communications, and better serving the needs of the traditionally underserved in our parks. We're about to give our first leadership award, which will be a $10,000 award along with technical assistance. We do a number of public programs with thought leaders looking at the interface of our parks and public spaces and social justice and design. And we're about to launch a new festival, Paseo, which is a BIPOC-led festival of emerging artists and grassroots aid and parks groups to help reanimate our downtown and our oldest parks. Hope to see you there July 15th through the 17th. We also do capital projects. Most recently, we completed fundraising for Rose City Playground, what we hope will be a prototype for public-private partnerships. And we're doing a feasibility study for the restoration of the Thompson Elk fountain in Main Street. Your contribution is an investment in the community. Operating dollars are the hardest things for us to raise. People love to give money to things. And over the last 20 years, our dozens and dozens of projects, over 95% of them have been community driven. So thank you for this opportunity to tell you a little bit about our work, and thank you for including us in the budget.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Michael Cronenthal.
Hi, somehow that was a mistake. So we don't have a testimony to give at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, no worries. And our last testimony for this evening would be by Francis Lansfield. Francis, are you able to unmute or press *6 if you're on mobile?
I'm not seeing Francis in the attendees right now.
So I think we did move Francis to a panelist, but I will say I think Francis actually was not on the list of folks that had pre-registered, but since we had some time, we were inviting anybody that was in the list, but perhaps I've invited Francis to unmute, and I think the opportunity has not been taken for a reason. So I think that may be the conclusion of our testimony. Jeremiah, do you have any other people on your list?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Okay.
Wonderful. So thank you so much for this public testimony. I want to open up some space to hear from our mayor and commissioners. Commissioner Rubio, do you have any concluding remarks that you'd like to make?
Sure. Let me see. Sure. First, I'd like to just, appreciate Director Kennard and Jen and the team at the City Budget Office for setting up a process that enables us to listen to the community in the budget process. I also want to thank everyone who shared their experiences and recommendations and thoughts with us on the budget that have testified tonight. This is my second year participating in the budget process, and I really do look forward to listening to these testimonies. It really helps inform my thinking. And it truly does shape our process. So we're all very clear about what our job is, and it's to listen and to really take it in and to be thoughtful. So with that, I just want to thank everyone for showing up tonight and taking time out of the day to be here. We have a lot of things to think about. And I just want to also reiterate what I heard loud and clear to our several things tonight, but one that really resonated for me was the run around climate change and having strong, clear investments. And I do think this budget does signal a strong step forward in our investments toward climate change. We know it's not enough, but we're on the path to doing what we can and doing it now. So thanks for your comments.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Rubio. Could we hear from Commissioner Ryan next?
Yes. One sec. There we go. Thank you. And first of all, thank you again, Director Kennard and your team, Jen and Jeremiah. You are quite the team. I just want to start off by thanking everyone who showed up to give testimony this evening. I always learn something new when the community shows up to testify. I definitely know a little bit more about Mount Tabor reservoirs, for example, this evening. And I really appreciated the consistent theme of people advocating for climate. And your comments also continue to strengthen my commitment to investing in solutions that support our homeless neighbors, as well as implementing next steps for community safety and advancing work that will ensure economic recovery and for the long-term vitality of Portland to make these investments track our results for that climate action. I'm thrilled that we're investing funds to help more Portlanders receive services on the ground that will lead to safe and stable housing. In addition, I'm excited about creating greater opportunities to close the racial equity gap in home ownership and the necessary step to invest in land banking. I'm also looking forward to I'm excited that this proposal has community safety investments we've agreed to during the PPA negotiations, and the investments are crucial steps in transforming our community safety system. And the proposal that specifically increases our staffing models for all of our first responder systems that will make us safer and improve morale for all those who serve us. And finally, I'm really grateful to continue to partner with Commissioner Mapps and expand the permitting improvement transition team to implement reforms of our broken permitting system to make things more streamlined, effective, and efficient, which will stimulate our economy, and simply put, time is money. I'm just excited that all of you are here tonight. I think this has been a very collaborative process amongst my colleagues, and I'm grateful for that. And now it's great to let the community in and continue to give us more insight. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan. Next on my list, I have Commissioner Hardesty. I know you just stepped out of the frame. I hate to put you on the spot. Are you okay to go next?
No, that's perfectly fine. I also want to start by thanking Director Kennard and her fabulous team of Jen and Jeremy. You guys, I don't know what was going on with the technology, but you just rolled with it, and we had a very productive evening. I also want to thank all the community members who came out and took time out of their day, time away from dinner and their families to actually share their perspective with us this evening. This is a rare budget forum where there isn't a major group that's organized to have us spend almost an hour talking about one subject. I love the fact that people talked about things they were passionate about. So whether it was the Youth Voice, Youth Vote, whether it was about the Old Town cultural organizations and why they need us to continue to lean in to help with their support. I also, people talked about the need to make sure that we don't see our houseless community members as a one size fits all, making sure that we have the services, but remembering that the people who are actually providing the services actually cannot afford to live in the city of Portland today. I also heard about Music Portland, talked about expanding, and I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like and how we can support the multicultural music community that we've always enjoyed in the Portland metro area. In fact, that's one of the things that kept me here. And of course, the Mount Tabor Reservoir was a topic of conversation as well. And I was happy that the council had already talked about it a bit earlier. So really felt like we're on the right track as far as keeping a promise that was made, at least taking it to the next step. The dark skies thing was one of the things that people spoke passionately about in my first budget here. And we did take the money back because, again, we were in crises after crises after crises. But I hope we find a path forward because, again, it is the right initiative, and there's never a bad time to do the right thing. Talked a bit about BDS and the reforms around permitting. We're all optimistic that we can fix that system so that it works for all the people who need to have access to it. I just want to end by saying that I'm always in awe at how well the public absorbs a budget that came out, at 9:30 this morning. And I'm always impressed, and I'm always impressed that people actually have very thoughtful feedback for us. The next couple of weeks is going to be a whirlwind, and at the end, people are going to tell you what that process will be. But I will say, please keep writing, keep calling, letting your voice be heard. This is the most important time in the budget process before we take the first vote, and amendments will be due soon. So I believe I'll ask Director Kennard when she closes if she can remind the council when we're required to have our amendments in. And again, I want to thank my colleagues because these are long days, but they are necessary for us to get to a result that we can be proud of. So thank you all.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Commissioner Hardesty. Next, we'll hear from Commissioner Mapps.
Well, like my colleagues, I want to thank everybody who showed up and testified today. This evening, I heard calls for this council to fight climate change. We were also challenged to support struggling businesses throughout Portland, especially businesses and institutions that have been hit hard by COVID, like Old Town. We also, I thought, heard some very compelling testimony urging us to embrace economic development in a new and creative way. And we can do that by embracing the creative economy, by creating a film and events office and exploring how we can integrate music into that effort. I'm excited about that. We also were challenged to embrace government reform by breaking down silos between our bureaus. One great example of that is the Permits Reform Initiative that Commissioner Ryan and I have been sharing. You should expect some important progress on that and announcements on that in the coming weeks. We were also reminded that supporting and prioritizing education and training for police is important, and I agree with that too. We were also reminded that this council should do more to support the American dream of helping people to buy their own homes. Common decency requires us to pay fair wages to all of our employees. That's an important reminder as we go into this next round of labor negotiations, and as we fairly compensate the folks who do the hard work of doing outreach to our houseless and houseless community and folks who help with mental health concerns. And we were reminded of our fundamental responsibility to maintain the city's basic assets, things like the city's community centers and the Mount Tabor Reservoir. I support all of those initiatives too, and I have good news. Progress on all of the projects which I just listed are contained in the mayor's proposed budget. I suspect many folks will still think that we needed to do more, but I am very excited and heartened by the progress and projects which are reflected in this budget. I want to congratulate and thank the mayor for both having a collaborative budget process with members of this council and the community, and you can really see it in the testimony that we heard today. I think many of the things that people ask for are reflected in this budget. That's a sign that this council and the mayor in particular has done a great job of listening to and responding to community needs. And I look forward to continuing this conversation, I believe next week on the 11th, when we consider amendments to this budget. And again, thanks to staff who helped us navigate this complicated process, and thanks to members of the public who participated in these very important conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Mayor Wheeler.
Mayor, I believe you're muted.
I have to do that at least once every meeting, don't I? Or it's not an official meeting. I just want to thank everybody who took time out of their busy nights to be here tonight. To have one of our city employees who I know works really hard, holding his baby in one hand while giving him the nightly bath while testifying That just shows how far people go to make sure that they're part of this process and that we hear from the public. So my staff and I recorded 26 different subjects in tonight's hearing. And I just want to say I appreciated what people were saying. I learned a lot. I do believe much of what was expressed as important to people is in fact reflected in this budget. We have over 180 decision packages that were funded. $73 million is going to homelessness. That's to get people safely and humanely off the streets, as well as addressing affordable housing. There's a significant commitment to refocusing, reforming, and restaffing our overall community safety system. There's about $25 million allocated towards livability issues. That's litter collection, graffiti abatement, working with neighborhood organizations and grassroots organizations, and a significant amount, about $30 million, going towards economic recovery. So a lot of what we heard from Ashley and other folks, concerns about small business resiliency, that's in here. Supporting our arts and cultural organizations, that's here. The climate resilience officer, that's here. $4 million towards funding the actions that were identified in our emergency climate action declaration at the beginning of the pandemic. That is all here, as well as staff for the Clean Air Protection Program, which people have been calling for. It's here. So I just want to tell you how much I appreciate the information that was provided tonight. There are some things that were not in the proposed budget that I heard about tonight. I want to dig a little bit deeper. Commissioner Hardesty, I think it was, mentioned the Dark Skies initiative that Bob Salinger had raised. That's something I'd like to know a little bit more and hear more about, and we certainly have time to do that. But the bottom line is, I just want to say thanks. Jen, thank you. Jen Gray O'Connor for doing another excellent job of facilitation. Director Jessica Kennard and her budget team, again, excellent work. Jeremiah and everybody who made this technology work, thank you for making it happen. With that, I'll turn it over to Jen to talk about next steps before I continue the hearing.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mayor Wheeler. I just want to give a last highlight to our next steps. The next meeting will be on Wednesday, May 11th, and that'll be from 2 to 5 p.m. That is the approved budget hearing. And again, at any point, if you want to give a testimony, you can do so at portland.gov/CBO or by emailing the budget office at budgetcomment@portlandoregon.gov. And all of that testimony will be provided to council offices. And now I'm going to pass it over to Director Kennard to address Commissioner Hardesty's question.
Thank you, Jen. So Commissioner, you asked around the deadlines related to amendments to the proposed budget. The first opportunity is at the approved hearing. We have requested that council offices provide our office with those amendments by the end of the day, Monday, so that it gives us time to make sure that things are structured correctly and that we can distribute the amendments to all of council so council can understand what are coming in the amendments on Wednesday. And then there's another opportunity to make amendments in advance of the adopted budget. There are some restrictions around the size and the magnitude of changes that can occur in the adopted budget. But for most intents and purposes, amendments can be considered as part of the adopted. So whatever you're thinking about, please just reach out to my office and we can advise you on the best timing to bring that amendment forward. And with that, I will turn it over to, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, thank you very much. And that was really for the purpose of the public understanding that if they need to get us additional information, the short timeline that we're operating under. So thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yes. And Commissioner Mapps, I see your hands raised.
Before we close, I just wanted to express my appreciation to the ASL interpreters. They've done a great job and a lot of heavy lifting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, I'm going to turn it over to the mayor, who is now going to continue this meeting of the Budget Committee.
All right, very good. So this meeting of the Budget Committee is continued to Wednesday, May 11th at 2 p.m. when the committee will consider the approved budget. Public comment and testimony may be provided by signing up to testify in advance via portlandoregon.gov/auditor. That's portlandoregon.gov/auditor. I believe that completes our business for this evening, Director Kennard.
Great.
All right, colleagues, thank you all. We are adjourned.